Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Just Law on IQRA TV. This is the second part to the show. Just before the break, we had a caller who was inquiring about indefinite leave to remain spouse applications, and in particular inquiring about the same-day service. Now, as I was explaining just before the break, that service does exist. Now what the Home Office is saying is that they will make a decision within 24 hours, slightly different to what the position was before. If you remember, under the old system where somebody paid the premium fee for a same-day decision, they would go to the Home Office, the designated Home Office building, make the application, and then the caseworkers would normally be there in that particular place that you went, whether it's Liverpool, whether it's London, and the Home Office caseworker would then make a decision whilst you're there in the Home Office building. Now the system has slightly changed, but the system is still applicable as before. Now you don't go to the Home Office as such. You go to one of the visa centres where your application is taken and processed, scanned, and then sent to the caseworker, and the caseworker will now make a decision within 24 hours. So if you make an application today at 12, you'll normally get a decision the following day around 12 o'clock as well. So it's not, I mean, the system does still operate, but in a slightly different way to before. The only other point about the same-day service is that the fee for that service has actually increased from approximately £590. It's now gone up to around £800. So there's been a significant increase in fees. Now, to be quite honest, to me it looks like the reason for that is the scheme is still very popular. And in my experience, 20-30% of people are using the scheme. So maybe it's a way of collecting money, maybe it is a way of trying to limit the number of people using the scheme, but it is a significant additional sum which is payable. So for example, somebody who's applying for indefinite leave to remain, which is what we're looking at today, would typically pay fees of about £2,400, and if they want that same day decision or a decision within 24 hours, they're paying an additional £800. So it mounts up quite considerably to about £3,200. So a significant amount of money. Now, that call related to indefinite leave to remain, where somebody is here on a spouse visa, and that's what we're looking at today. Let's come back to that topic after we've taken the next call. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh yeah, I just called for the law.
Yep, you're live on air, so please do fire away.
I just called, I earn about 14,500.
Yep, okay.
And I would like to know what's for the spouse, for the savings route.
Okay.
Like how much should I have in my savings?
Okay, so what kind of application will you be making? Is it to extend the visa?
No, this is first time spouse visa application, as I had applied earlier and it was rejected.
Right.
Because I don't earn that much.
I understand.
So I was opting for the other route, for the savings route.
Okay, all right, okay. Now, if it's 14,500, so you're short by 15, 16, 17, 18, you're short by about 4,100.
Yes.
For 8,000, 10,000, you're looking at savings of around £27,000 that you will need.
£27,000.
Approximately £7,000.
Approximately.
Now, because the way you do the calculation,
yes,
is this, that you first of all work out how much are you short by. You're short by about £4,100, right?
Yes.
You multiply that by 2.5. So it's their calculation, but that comes up to about just over £2,000. Plus you add on £16,000. It's a weird calculation, but it comes up to around £27,000.
£27,000. And that's fine. Thank you for your help.
No
and what else should I need to have, from where my savings has come as a proof?
So you just need to make sure, as far as your savings is concerned, that money will need to be in the bank account for 6 months.
6 months, yes.
Right. The other thing that you need to remember is that they might ask for confirmation. In fact, you should submit. They say submit a declaration. So you will need to explain where the money's come from. And the money is all yours, so it's not money that's been borrowed where you need to pay it back to anybody. So you need to you need to just bear that in mind. So there are 2 points you need to bear in mind. The money's got to be there for 6 months. You need to explain it's your money and it's not borrowed, so it doesn't have to be paid back to anybody. So on the savings, that's
Yes.
what you need to bear in mind. But you're looking at savings of about £27,000. That's what you're looking at.
Thank you very much for your help.
No problem.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So that obviously was a question relating to the initial spouse applications. Now, today we're looking at indefinite leave to remain applications, but whatever your questions relate to, please feel free to give us a ring. So the key point I was looking at for indefinite leave to remain applications where people are here on a spouse visa is that the Home Office will look at your relationship, will look at your finances, and will also look at the English language requirements. So on the relationship, first of all, you need to make sure that you have enough evidence that the relationship is genuine and subsisting. And the way the Home Office looks at that is to look at where have the parties, the husband and wife, where have they been receiving their bills, their letters. Kind of documents you can submit to the Home Office would be documents such as gas, electricity, water, telephone, TV license, bank statements, etc. Now they show, if they've been coming to the same address, they will show that both yours and your partner's documents have been coming to the same address. So that's how the Home Office will assess whether the relationship is genuine or not. Now, just on that point, now if there is a problem in the relationship, then you should really seek advice as soon as possible from an immigration lawyer, because there may be other options for you if you act quickly. Now, if I give you an example, normally somebody who's in a spouse visa route after 5 years would qualify for indefinite leave to remain within that route. But assuming the parties are together, let's say there's a problem, there may be other routes that they could use. So for example, they may be able to rely on, if there is domestic violence, that might be a possibility for extending one's visa or to apply for indefinite leave to remain. If there are children, that could be the basis of extending one's indefinite leave to remain. If the parties have divorced and the spouse who's here in the UK with a visa is looking to remarry, it may be possible to make an application on that basis. So there are a number of ways in which you might still be able to extend your visa if the relationship is still not subsisting. But as I said at the outset of the show, really the key point is a preparation well in advance. If you leave things too late, then it may not be possible to look at alternatives. So the key thing really is to get advice as soon as possible. So that's the issue, the main issue in terms of the relationship. The second issue that you need to address when you apply for indefinite leave to remain based on a spouse visa is that you will need to meet the financial requirement. And on air, we receive a lot of questions about the financial requirement. And I think a couple of calls we've had today relating to the financial requirement. Now, in the same way that when the initial spouse application was made, there was a financial requirement that had to be met. Normally the financial requirement is that the parties need to be earning 18,600. That was applicable when the initial application was made. There was a requirement, financial requirement to be met when the extension application was made. In the same way, when you make an application for indefinite leave to remain, there is a financial requirement that needs to be met. Now, in previous shows, we've looked at how the financial requirement can be met, and we don't have sufficient time today to go into a lot of detail, but different rules apply to different types of income. If you're employed, there are different rules. If you're self-employed, there are different rules. If you've worked for 6 months or more, there are different rules. If you've worked for less than 6 months, there are different rules. You might be able to rely on your savings in order to meet the requirement. You might be able to look at rental income. You may be able to look at dividend income, etc. So there are various different rules which relate to meeting the financial requirement. But the key thing here is that the financial requirement will need to be met. Now, the problem is really where the financial requirement isn't met. What's likely to happen in that situation? So if I go back to what I was saying before, that it's important that you take advice well in advance. And let's say you don't, and all of a sudden you realize towards the end that, look, I need to make my indefinite leave to remain application, but I don't meet the financial requirement. Now, that could cause quite serious problems for applicants if they don't meet the financial requirement. In my experience, those kind of what's likely to happen is likely to fall into two different categories. Where there are children, the Home Office is likely to grant the visa, and the Home Office is likely to put the applicant in what's known as this 10-year route to settlement. So they won't get indefinite leave to remain straight away. They'll be told that you're on a 10-year route to settlement, so they qualify for settlement after 10 years. Now, that obviously is problematic in the sense that the person has to continue to extend the visa up until they've got 10 years legal residence in the UK. But it could be more problematic if somebody who has left things too late, doesn't meet the financial requirements, and don't have children either. The Home Office approach at the moment in those circumstances is quite draconian. Their position is to refuse the application and say to the applicant that the applicant needs to make another fresh application by going back to their home country and applying again and coming back into the United Kingdom. So that can cause severe disruption. So it is important that the parties do keep an eye on the financial requirement, because a failure to meet the requirement can cause significant problems. So for example, if the Home Office take the view that you don't meet the requirement, there are no children either, and therefore the application falls to be refused, the consequences could well be that you have to leave the country, go back and apply. So you have to leave the job that you have here. There might be mortgage commitments, there may be other commitments. Your spouse would be left on their own in the United Kingdom. So it is important that these things are given a lot of thought and looked at seriously well in advance, because if something goes wrong, there potentially could be quite severe consequences for the parties involved. So that's the second main issue that you need to address. First was the relationship. You'll need proper evidence of that. The second is finances, and if you don't meet the financial requirement, there can be problems as well. The third requirement, again, which causes a problem for a lot of applicants, is the English language requirement. Those who have been through the system will be aware that initially when an application is made to come to the United Kingdom as a spouse, there is quite a basic English test which needs to be undertaken and a certificate obtained. Now that test is at quite a low level. Normally it's a test called A1 Life Skills, which applicants need to pass, and that's quite a basic test. Those who've been through the system will know that when they apply for an extension, they then sit a slightly higher test, and that test is an A2 test in English, slightly more difficult. Now when it comes to indefinite leave to remain, it's another test which is what the parties need to sit, and it's again at a much higher level, and that test is B1 a level test in English. Now that does require those who are sitting the test to be able to speak English to a reasonable standard. They should be able to hold a conversation in English to be able to pass that test. Now the way that test is undertaken is for the applicant who's applying for the English certificate. They'll normally be asked to pick a topic. It could be a holiday, it could be something that they're interested in, it could be their home country, etc. And they'll be asked to speak about the topic for a few minutes. And after that, the person who is conducting the interview will ask them questions and engage in a conversation with them. So it's not at the most basic level, which is what those who are coming to the United Kingdom are normally used to passing, the A1, the A2 level. At B1, which is the certificate that they need at the indefinite leave stage, the English ability is much higher. You need to be able to speak reasonably fluent English, in the sense that you need to be able to hold a conversation with the person who's conducting the interview. Now, again, in my experience, preparation is the key thing. You know when the visa is going to expire, so you know how much time you've got to improve your English. Now, to be quite honest, although the standard of English B1 is reasonably high, but there's no reason why, if somebody attends classes once or twice a week and gives a lot of thought to this, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to get to the B1 standard within, let's say, a year and a half. So if you plan in advance, if you give this a bit of thought, there's no reason why, even at this B1 standard, which is reasonably high, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to meet that requirement. So the key thing is, if you want indefinite leave to remain, you will need to obtain a B1 certificate in English, which is something which is a test where they are testing your speaking and listening ability. They're not looking at reading or writing, they're looking at your speaking and listening ability. Now, let's say a person is unable to pass that test. In one sense, it's not going to be that problematic, because what the Home Office will do is, because they've already passed the A2 test before, the Home Office is likely to give them an extension. That's unlike the situation we talked about before relating to finances, where if you don't meet the financial requirement, the Home Office is likely to say, if you don't have children, Home Office is likely to say you need to go back to your home country and reapply. On the English front, it seems to be less problematic, because they are normally willing to give you an extension of your visa. But as I've said before, with advanced preparation, hopefully there's no reason why one wouldn't be able to pass that B1 test in English. Now, the other aspect of the English language and knowledge requirement is that you will need to pass the Life in the UK test, which again causes significant problems for a lot of applicants. Now, I can understand why it does, where somebody's English language ability is limited and they need to sort of understand questions relating to English history, etc. They need to try and learn what kind of questions they're going to get and what the answers are going to be. It's normally difficult enough as it is, but where somebody's English ability is not particularly high, I think that makes matters much more difficult for those who need to pass that test. So I think, again, the key thing is preparation. One needs to really start looking at passing that test well in advance. Now, in my experience, I have found that there are applicants who have undertaken the test on a number of occasions. So every other week they've tried to go and sit the test, and their results have hopefully increased. So it may be that they pass the test on the third occasion or on the fourth occasion. They need to really stick to it, and hopefully they will be able to pass the test. But it is problematic, because on the one hand, the B1 test that we're looking at tests your ability to converse in English, which after living here for a number of years you might be able to get to. But then the problem is that those who are not very good at sitting tests, etc., they are required to sit a Life in the UK test, where it's really a knowledge test about various matters relating to the United Kingdom, various matters relating to various aspects. It could be historical questions, questions relating to sport, questions relating to the UK Parliament, UK government. So those questions span quite a wide area of life in the UK, and really it's really a question of the person who needs to apply acquainting themselves to these various topics that you could be asked about and sitting a test, similar to sitting a test at school, college or university. Some people may simply not be very good at doing tests, but unfortunately there is no way around it. If in the unfortunate situation where somebody is unable to pass the Life in the UK test, then hopefully it is still possible to extend their visa, get an extension, and that will hopefully give you more time to try and pass the test. Now, it's something that I've said throughout the show today, and I know we're looking at indefinite leave to remain applications where somebody's here as a spouse. Whichever application we're looking at, as I've said a number of times, preparation and looking at matters well in advance is the key. Classic example is sitting the Life in the UK test. If you start trying to learn about Life in the UK, start going on courses which are offered in your local area, and in my experience, whichever town you're in, most towns where a lot of people are applying for these kind of tests, there's going to be centres where they hold classes in English, and again those centres normally hold classes in passing the Life in the UK test. So preparation well in advance, going to these courses, hopefully will get you up to speed and help you pass the Life in the UK test and pass the English test as well. So in a nutshell, that's essentially what we are looking at when we're looking at applying for indefinite leave to remain based on the person being here on a spouse visa. You're looking at demonstrating that the relationship is genuine and subsisting. You're looking at demonstrating that the financial requirement is met, the 18,600 requirement is met, and you're looking at being able to, you're going to have to demonstrate that you meet the English language and knowledge requirement by way of submitting the required English test and the Life in the UK test. Those are the three things that you will normally need to concentrate on when you make an indefinite leave to remain application. Now, as I said before, if you do find that there are some difficulties in any of those areas, there may be solutions to that. Now, in the unfortunate situation where it could well be that the parties are no longer living together, again, there could be solutions to that. The key thing is that you need to try and ensure that the visa doesn't expire. If you're looking at moving out into another route or making some other application, you have to try and ensure that those applications are submitted before the expiry of the visa. So the key thing is, I think the key message for today's show is the rules are complicated. The rules do require quite specific documentation that need to be submitted. Advanced preparation really is the key in ensuring that you make a successful application, whether it's to do with this or whether it's to do with any other immigration application that you need to make. That unfortunately brings us to the end of the show. Hopefully we'll be back next week, same time, Monday at 6 o'clock. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.